A homeless man without a penny to his name, standing on a busy street corner watching people pass by. Then, in an act that seems impossible, he gives away his last dollar to a complete stranger. What would you think? That's exactly what happened, and the unexpected twist that followed will leave you speechless and restore your faith in humanity. It was one of those cold, blustery mornings in downtown Chicago when Marcus, a homeless man in his late 50s, shuffled along the sidewalk. His tattered coat barely provided any warmth as he trudged past the hurried footsteps of people lost in their own worlds. The city was alive with noise, honking cars, the rhythmic steps of commuters, and the distant chatter of street vendors. Marcus had been homeless for the better part of 5 years. He used to be a carpenter with a steady job and a modest apartment, but life had a way of knocking him down: bad luck, health issues, and the collapse of his marriage. Slowly, everything slipped away. He wasn't the kind of homeless person that people avoided to look at. He wasn't loud or disruptive. In fact, he spent most of his days sitting quietly on the corner, just trying to survive. On that morning, as the wind bit at his face, he held out his hand to the people passing by. "Spare a dollar, sir. Anything helps," he mumbled softly, a familiar request that most people ignored. It was a simple routine for Marcus, and he'd grown used to the rejection. People either turned away or sometimes they'd look at him with judgment, as if his situation was somehow his fault. Yet, he always held onto a small sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, someone would stop and show a little kindness. But today was different. Today, a woman named Jessica walked past him and paused. Jessica, a middle-aged woman with a kind face and weary eyes, glanced at the man and saw the desperation in his eyes. But it wasn't just the desperation that made her stop. It was the way he looked at her. There was a certain vulnerability in his gaze, as if he had given up on life but was still clinging to that small hope for a spark of kindness. Jessica had been struggling in her own way. She had just been laid off from her job as a teacher, a job she had loved for years. Her bills were piling up, and she had no idea how she was going to make ends meet. Yet, in that moment, as she stood there on the sidewalk, looking at Marcus, something inside her stirred. It wasn't pity, it wasn't charity, it was empathy. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. Marcus hesitated for a moment before answering, his voice low, almost as if speaking hurt. "Just trying to get by, miss. It's been tough. Don't know how much longer I can make it." He shifted uncomfortably, his hand still outstretched, hoping for even a little change. Jessica thought for a moment. She had only $2 in her wallet. She reached into her purse and pulled out a dollar bill, staring at it for a moment. It seemed like such a small thing, yet it was all she had left. Her stomach growled, a reminder of her own struggle, but the sight of Marcus, standing there with nothing, made her decision clear. She handed him the dollar. "Here you go. I hope it helps." Marcus's eyes widened. "Thank you, ma'am. You're very kind." He was used to people ignoring him, but this was different. There was something in the woman's eyes that made him feel seen, not just as a beggar, but as a human being. But as Jessica began to turn away, something unusual happened. Marcus called out to her, "Wait! You dropped something." Startled, Jessica turned back. "What?" "I didn't drop anything," she said, looking around. I... Marcus hesitated. "I want to give you this." He slowly reached into his pocket, pulling out the last dollar he had, a crumpled note that had seen better days. "No, you don't have to do that," Jessica protested, but Marcus insisted, his voice firm. "Please, I know what it's like to feel like there's no way out. Maybe this can help you too." He smiled, though it was tinged with sadness, as he extended the crumpled dollar toward her. For a moment, Jessica just stood there, utterly speechless. Here was a man with nothing to give, and yet he was offering her his last bit of money. It was the purest form of selflessness she had ever encountered. Her chest tightened, overwhelmed by the depth of his gesture. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling. Marcus nodded. "I may not have much, but I know what it's like to be without. You deserve something too." Jessica didn't know what to say. The weight of the moment hung heavy between them. With tears in her eyes, she took the dollar from him, and for the first time in a long while, felt a small glimmer of hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for showing me that there's still kindness in the world." Marcus watched her walk away, feeling lighter than he had in months. He didn't expect anything in return. After all, he had lived most of his life in survival mode, just trying to get by. But that moment, that exchange, felt like a spark in the darkness. What happened next would change both of their lives in ways neither could have predicted. 2 weeks later, Jessica was walking down the same street. Her head was down as she was deep in thought about her situation. The weight of her job loss still hung heavily on her, and she had no idea how she was going to move forward. But as she neared the corner where she had met Marcus, something caught her eye. A familiar face, Marcus, was standing in front of a small cafe, wearing a clean jacket and smiling as he handed out flyers. He had a spring in his step, and his eyes sparkled with a newfound sense of purpose. Jessica stopped in her tracks, stunned. "Marcus." He turned, and when he saw her, he smiled warmly. "Hey, it's you. How's it going?" Jessica couldn't believe her eyes. "What happened to you? You look different." Marcus chuckled. "Well, funny story. That dollar you gave me? I used it to buy a coffee that morning. I sat there thinking about what you said to me, and something clicked. I realized I had been waiting for a handout, but I wasn't giving anything back. So I decided to turn things around." Marcus went on to explain how he had found a local shelter that offered job training programs, and through the connections he made there, he got a job working as a janitor at the cafe. The owner, impressed by his work ethic, had offered him a place to stay and a steady job. "I know it's just a small job," Marcus said with a grin, "but it's a start. And I'm grateful. I'm finally working towards something again." Jessica was speechless. She hadn't expected this at all. The man she had given a dollar to was now standing before her, transformed. And in that moment, she realized something. Kindness had the power to change lives. With tears in her eyes, Jessica smiled and said, "I'm so proud of you, Marcus." "You did it?" Marcus winked. "No, we did it. You showed me that there was still good in the world. You didn't just give me a dollar. You gave me hope." Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness, whether it's giving your last dollar to a stranger or offering a smile, can spark a chain of events that change lives. In a world that often feels indifferent, it's those moments that remind us of our shared humanity and the power of compassion. When we lift each other up, we all rise.